everybody, and welcome to our Vaseline and Uranium Glass class. So the one thing to remember with Vaseline in the United States, it's going to be yellow. And then if you look over to the edges, you can see the glow of the green. And you can always verify it by using a blacklight. It's always going to glow green. So it won't glow any other color when it has uranium in it. It's always going to glow green. So they started using uranium to just color ceramics and glass as far back as 79 AD. So it was in the 1830s when Joseph Riedel in the Czech Republic started using it to start mass producing glass and started making this yellow glass. So they started also making it in Cornwall, England in the 1920s, but the 30s is when it really got started, the 1830s. So uranium glass can have as little as 0.1% of uranium and all the way up to 20% uranium in the glass. So they started off with these colors right here, just the yellow, which originally they called it canary glass or topaz glass. So we're talking about before there was black lights. They had no idea this stuff glowed. They had no idea about uranium being radioactive as well. So really, we come into, Pierre and Marie Curie start working with uranium and radium and seeing the properties and that kind of things and start letting people know, hey, this stuff is radioactive, it's an issue. And both of them actually passed away because of having radiation poisoning from doing all of their experiments with uranium and radium. So it's thought that the reason why this type of glass was so popular during the Victorian time, people would love to put it in their windows. And as the sun is going down, it starts to have a nice glow. Or if, like myself, if you have a couple of these pieces on your console below your TV and you turn your lights out and so the TV's just on, it has a nice soft light glow as well. So it really became not as popular toward the 1920s because that's when we start getting electricity in houses. And, they really don't, as it's starting to get dark, they're turning on lights. So they're not getting that ambient glow during twilight that they used to in the actual, in their homes before they had electricity in there. The big heyday for the Vaseline glass was 1880 to 1905. So during 1905, we have several other different types of glass that are coming into play. We have what's known as opalescent, which this is also a piece of Vaseline opalescent. So what makes this type of glass considered opalescent is the white part here. They actually dip that in the ash to stop the colorant. So the opalescent glass actually came in blue and cranberry. They did it in Vaseline as well, and a green without uranium. So these different colors come into popularity where this is just yellow at this time. And then, of course, we start off with Carnival Glass during this time, which has its heyday in the 20s as well. And even though some of it, they actually made that has uranium in it. And then here at the bottom, you can see this glowing. Let me use my other one. The bottom will actually glow on this as well. So in the late 20s, they still have this uranium around. So it's like, what are we going to do with it? We need to do something different. We need to come up with a different kind of color. So that's when they decided to come out with what's called Jadeite. So you can see how brightly this glows. This is Jeanette. And this piece is McKee. You can see how brightly it glows. So with this, the Vaseline glass can either be translucent or opaque, and every different shade in between there. So the Jadeite comes out and it's more of an opaque, even though your Jeanette, when you're looking at close at it, it has almost translucent around the edges. So these came out as a way to use the uranium that they had, but they're actually adding now iron oxide. That's where the green is coming in. That's how they're changing the color of it. And that makes a difference too when you're dealing with your old Vaseline glass in the 20s. They got all the way up to using 20% uranium in these items per 1,000. They're talking about 1,000 pounds of glass. They could be up to 20% uranium. So you have to be really careful if you want to ship this older Vaseline glass, because you need a Geiger counter. Because nowadays, every shipping company, when they go through the conveyor belts, they're actually going through a Geiger counter. So if you shipped something like Thomas Webb, which is a UK company that used over 7% uranium in their product, it could actually set off a Geiger counter, especially when you're doing an import-export. So if you ordered something from there and it's being shipped back to the United States, that could actually trigger a Geiger counter during that process. And what would happen at the shipping company is they would destroy the package. So if you're the shipper and they destroy it because it sets off the Geiger counter, then you're out the product and you have to pay the customer that ordered it from you. So we actually here ship this all the time, because it's not a pure uranium used to make the color. Then we don't have any problem with that. We've shipped this to Canada before without any type of problem. But if you are going to ship the older stuff from the 20s, then you really would want a Geiger counter to let you know what type of percentage of alpha waves this is setting off. So with this type of glass, it is an alpha wave that is setting off. And alpha waves can be blocked as easy as putting a piece of paper on there. But Geiger counters, they're picking up different things on those that they can pick up things. So during the 20s, the big thing that also became into play was radium. So probably a lot of you have heard about the Radium Girls. So those were the ladies that were actually painting the watch faces. So they make this discovery of radium, and it glows this bright blue color all on its own. At this point, besides the sun glowing this a little bit, we still don't have black lights, but radium is glowing all on its own without any help. So people think, well, that's got to be good for you. Let's start putting this in food and creams and our water and all kinds of things. So during this time, during World War I, they actually need to have watches and stuff that they can see in the trenches. So when they're painting this stuff, this is going to glow all on its own in the dark. This radium watch is glowing so they can actually see the time. So the girls were actually using this. They were told, it's perfectly fine. It's not going to hurt you. So they actually take their brushes and their lip pointing. So they're rolling their brushes on their lips to get that nice, tight point again. So they're doing this tiny, minute work on these watches, not knowing that they're constantly putting radiation in their body. And so a lot of people have heard of the Radium Girls. They've heard about the group from New Jersey, but there's actually ladies that this was going on all throughout the United States. It wasn't just in New Jersey. It was, in Massachusetts. It was in Ottawa, Illinois. It was in different places that they were running these radium plants for these luminescent products, not realizing the damage it was going to do till these people have sores that are, happening. They're, they have their bones are literally breaking down. They're just bones are just crumbling from the amount of radiation that they're getting from the radium. So it took to 1938 for the government to actually say, hey, we're passing a Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act saying you can no longer use radium products. Now, once they really truly discovered what was going on, these ladies that actually passed away had to be put in lead-lined coffins, because that's how much radiation they actually had. So it's one of those things, a lot of people, I can actually show you after the class, there's actually a nice big container that's actually Vaseline glass. And when you bought this big container for your water, it actually came with this disc peel-like chunk of radium, because it was supposed to be good for you to drink the radium water. So uranium glass is safe to use, radium isn't. So no matter how cool those watches seem that glow, you don't really want that in your house. Because with radium, it actually also has gamma waves, and that's why it's so dangerous. And it literally goes straight into your body, straight into your bones, and causes issues. And as it's breaking down, that's releasing radon gas. I know some of us that are older remember probably around the 80s, people were talking about having radon gas in their homes and having to test their homes, things like that. So when you have that product, what happens is the radium will actually, off the watches and stuff, it breaks down and it becomes a fine particle so you can inhale it. It's going to turn into that radon gas as the radioactivity is breaking down, even though with radium it takes 1,600 years just to get to its half-life point, which means it's only half as reactive as it used to be. Is really not something you want to collect. If you had a collection, you would actually have to have it hermetically sealed. So that way, having it hermetically sealed means there's no air that can get to it, which that wouldn't release the radon gas. But then you have to still come and have that lead lined as well to protect yourself. So it's very interesting. A lot of people that like uranium glass also are fascinated by the radium glass. I would suggest if you want to collect something about the radium, that would be your ephemera, the advertisements, maybe metal signs, things like that. You really don't want to collect those watches and anything that had that product on it, because it's actually quite dangerous where this isn't. So with your actual uranium, you can use it in your house. They've actually done a whole survey on it. The Nuclear Council did. So with these type of products, you actually get more radioactivity from your banana and your spinach, because what people don't realize, those products actually have potassium, which is also radioactive. And that's why people say, oh, your banana is radioactive. Now, it doesn't have enough to hurt you. And people that have, high blood pressure, you've got to have potassium to help regulate that. So you're not consuming enough of that to hurt you. But this glass actually has less radioactivity than your banana or your spinach kind of thing. So you can definitely use it. You don't have to be worried about, oh, I can't put something in it, I can't use it, I'm afraid to have it in my house. It's totally harmless. You could actually use the glasses, things like that. So you don't have to worry about it's dangerous. Now with these items, you wouldn't want to use a glass that's chipped. And the other thing that they suggest is you wouldn't want to take one of the pitchers and fill it full of orange juice and just leave that in your refrigerator all the time, because they're a little bit concerned that the acid could slowly break down the inside of the glass. But other than that, day-to-day use, you can use it. A lot of people don't necessarily want to use the Friggies. So this would have been one of the refrigerator dishes. I like to use these dishes as risers, because I really don't want to put my food in, not because I'm afraid of it, I just don't want to break it. And it's really not that big. So I like to use them in my displays as actual risers. And then and of course they glow nice and bright and green as well. And then you can take the cake stands and also use them. And they're really great to use as risers in your collection as well, if you don't want to use them. This is the top of a butter dish, but you could actually flip it like this and give yourself a little bit of height as you're doing your collection. So I like to use those kind of things like that. So Fenton also used uranium in their items. So this also has uranium in it. This is what they call a satin glass. They've used uranium and a little bit of iron oxide to get this nice light color. It's a very matte color. They also do this in a color that's called custard. We had a couple of pieces. We used it in our photo shoot that we done this week with our email. Someone came in and bought both of those yesterday. So the custard is kind of similar to this with this matte finish. And of course it has uranium in it. So this color is usually known as Seville. McKee made it. It's a nice light yellow. And they also make a color that's a little bit lighter known as ivory. And even something as white as this will actually, well, wrong one, will actually glow. And I'll talk about why the difference with the lights as well. So a lot of people are out, looking for uranium glass, and they think, well, it's light enough, it's the right color. You really always want your Blacklight. A lot of people get confused about this company right here. This is Indiana Glass Company. This was popular 60s and 70s. This color is called Chantilly Lace. So it's a nice light green, and it kind of looks like it might react. Oh, I don't have my Blacklight with me. Let me take it home with me. They get home, they're so disappointed because it's not reactive. So it's always good to have your Blacklight with you. It doesn't matter how small your Blacklight is. It doesn't have to be big. So with McKee and Jeanette, they made their uranium glass from 1931 to 1942. 1942, United States gets into the war. No one can use your uranium glass going forward. So when Fire King came on board in 1945, they're like, oh, we'll make our own version of Jadeite. It doesn't glow because when they started in 45, they weren't allowed to use uranium. So when you have them together, this almost has like a blue-green color versus the other two colors. So with this, they made Jadeite from 1945 to 1965. In the United States, no one was allowed to be able to purchase uranium for glass making from 42 to 59. So from 1959, they started back up allowing people to make glass with uranium. And this was probably made around the 2000s. This is a Boyd piece. You can see it's nice and bright. And with this, believe it or not, you would think it has more uranium in it. It has a lot less. This item was probably only made with like 0.1% of uranium. Nowadays, if you wanted to actually make uranium glass, you're only allowed as a manufacturer to have 15 pounds of uranium at a time. So you could only make one 1,000 pound batch with your 15 pounds of uranium. Because of that, a lot of companies don't want to make uranium anymore. So we had customers, actual companies making up to like 2013. Moser, Summit, Westmoreland were making, Boyd was making it, but it's so hard to get it, and you're only allowed to have that limited amount of product at a time, and that's just going to make that 1,000 pound batch of glass. They really don't want to deal with it as much, so you're really looking at the older products. There are ways you can get confused when you are actually dealing with your Blacklight. You can see this little clear piece is barely glowing. They call this glow like a lemonade type glow because this isn't uranium. This is actually magnesium. So magnesium, depending on how you take magnesium, you can actually get it to glow a light green. You've got this nice clear color. That's how you get your beautiful amethyst glasses using magnesium. That's where the glass, the sun purple, where people would put it up in their windows and get the UV light, would slowly change it to a very light lavender. But one of the things that someone like me likes is, I know with this very light glow, I know it's magnesium, but it will also let me know, is this piece an early American pressed glass piece? Because those pieces had magnesium in them. So that can let you know if you're looking at a piece of glass and it's like, was this made in the 1920s or was this made in the 1880s? Use my Blacklight. It's slightly glowing. It's got the magnesium in it. Then manganese, not magnesium, manganese. Then more than likely it is a piece of early American pressed glass before you can actually be able to look it up. So with the makers of Blacklights, that makes our life easier when you're trying to collect this stuff. The Blacklight was actually made in 1937. And of course, most of us know it became very popular in the 60s because of the posters. Those posters, those dyes were using actual radioactive minerals that would react to the ultraviolet light. So, of course, your lemony yellow was using uranium, and there's other colors that we're going to talk about. So with those, with your black lights, there's this one is probably a 395, and this is a 365, where this one glows better. Well, they glow about the same, but your 365 will pick up more on your manganese than your other lights. So if you're looking for other things, it can be helpful to have a 365. This is one that I just got from Amazon. I like this brand because it's actually rechargeable. So it's a rechargeable battery. I can hook it up, I can recharge it, because you can go through your blacklight batteries a lot, especially living in Las Vegas in the summer when you're hunting for scorpions, because they glow as brightly as this glass as well. So in my neighborhood, unfortunately, we have a lot of scorpions, so we're looking for scorpions. So I'm using my black light a lot. So with your black lights, these are using ultraviolet light that is showing the fluorescence on the glass. So these are UVA rays, and your sunlight is UVA rays, which is why your sunlight can show this when you're looking at different ways with the sun. You can see the slight glow with this type of glass. So you want a UVA light when you're searching for this type of glass. Your UVB lights, those are the lights that the police are using that when they're looking for bodily fluids. So those, they don't fluoresce as brightly, and that's why they have to turn all the lights out. So you see on the cop shows, they turn the lights out because it doesn't have the long range of that type of light, but they need it differently for what they're looking for under the UV lights. And then I'm sure you've heard since COVID, people have talked about, oh, UV lights can kill germs. UVC lights can kill germs, but those have much shorter wavelengths. And those are things that you can actually buy them for a room, but when you turn that on and you set it, no one is walking around the room when that is killing germs, because a UVC will kill germs, but it's more of a radiation type killing of stuff. So people aren't walking around when they actually are using that type of equipment. Or like you've seen your CPAP, you're putting that in that and closing it. You don't want to be looking at that. You're not exposing your skin to that type of ultraviolet light. So that will work. It's just a different type of light. So you want to make sure when you're looking for these are UVA lights. If you want to actually use black lights in your cabinets and stuff at home, the best thing to use is the actual LED versions. The LED versions are more expensive, but they last a lot longer. They also come in flexible strips. So if you want to wrap it around a corner, I saw someone who actually took their door casing out from the post and actually come over about 6 inches and made tiny little shelves for smaller items like this. And then they were able to take those LED strips, because they're very flexible, and flex it all the way around and turn those on. Which is great if you want your collection to glow all the time. That's fine. You just don't want to be looking at that glowing collection all the time. When you turn on your light, you don't want to turn it up toward you. You want to shine it down to see if it's on. It actually can do a little bit of damage to your retina and your cornea, so you don't want to expose your eyes looking directly at it. So you wouldn't put your collection on the wall with your TV, have the black light on it all the time glowing, and you're going to be staring at it for 2 or 3 hours a night. You don't want to do that kind of thing. It's perfectly fine to have your cabinet lit up and, oh yeah, it's cool over here, but you're not staring at it. You wouldn't want to have it in a situation where my dog is in the kitchen and my cabinets are all lit up green, and they're going to be in that kitchen possibly looking at that all day. Because, once again, you don't want them to worry about their eyesight as well. But, having it in your cabinet glowing, that's fine. You just don't want it in a situation where you're just staring at it all the time. And you don't want to, do this right here and turn it on. But you do want to check out your jewelry with it. So, people ask about jewelry. They did actually use, the little glass eyes. They actually can use uranium in dyeing of paint. So you can have paint actually dyed as well that'll show up like this. Of course, being that uranium glass really got started in the Czech Republic, and we know they like to make the Czech beautiful glass, they also made beaded necklaces. So necklaces were very popular from the 1880s to the 1920s with the glass. So, and they even made rings that sold today online. So you can find rings, you can find pins, you can find necklaces, you can find earrings, all different types of things like that that glow. But there's also other types of glass that glow as well. So over here we have these earrings that are glowing. So of course it's not glowing green, so it's not uranium, but we have products cadmium and selenium that glow. So, and just like uranium, you can use those in products as well. So with those types of products, and I'm going to have to go back to my notes because it's not something I know a ton about, but I did want to get it back for this group. So with your selenium, when you add that in the glass, it can actually glow yellow, orange, or red. And your selenium can actually glow yellow, red, or even pink. So with those two colors, cadmium is also used in, artist, the types of paints and things like that. But it'll actually glow as well. So they use that in glass. So you can see this is actually glowing. This has got the cadmium in it. So this is a piece of L.E. Smith used this in the 60s and 70s. And some of the Viking, the red, they actually used what they call selenium ruby. And it's got, the selenium ruby actually has selenium and cadmium sulfate in it. So it will glow as well. We have a piece of that actually in Sheen's booth. Her bird is going to glow when you hit it with the black light. And then we have a piece of the swung glass in our display, the persimmon. That bottom is going to glow because it's got the cadmium in it as well. So there's all kinds of fun things that glow. So a new thing that's come up of people saying, oh, there's blue glass, there's blue Vaseline glass. So there is a way for blue glass to glow. So if you find a piece of blue glass and it's blue and then you shine a light on it and it's still glowing lightly blue, that doesn't have uranium in it. It has actually potassium. It's glowing. So you have to be careful when you're buying online because people will say, oh, it's blue Vaseline. You want to make sure that those pictures are matching up. Now, Mosier did do a cat that is a blue color that's got a slight green color in it. It's a dark, rich color. And when you put that on a black light, it will actually glow green because they actually did use uranium in there to actually achieve that color. But it's really the only thing out there that people know that have proved that that is actually a uranium. A blue uranium is the cat. But if it's blue and it glows blue, then it's a potassium. So you don't want people, when you're buying online, you have to be careful for things like that. So like you can see this guy, he's got potassium in those colors. So he's got that blue color. His eyes are glowing. So he's got these nice little green eyes. And then when you hit him with the black light, he's got the blue because he's got potassium in that color. So you do want to make sure if you're buying online, they should have good clear pictures of the product without the black light. And then they should have the same exact item with the black light. So I always like to see both. Some of them they like to be, that'll be the only picture there'll be 5 or 6 pictures of it glowing. That doesn't tell you what kind of color it is before it's glowing. So, did you want it to be actual Vaseline? Did you want it to be a type of regular green uranium glass? Did you want it to be, a fitting piece of satin glass? Did you want it to actually be custard glass? So that's why you want them to always have a picture of the before and after, so that way you know what type of glass you're buying. So see if I got any questions. Yeah. Make sure I covered everything. And then I have a little thing I can pass out here. My printer didn't do a good job. It shows you the pink that the selenium can glow. I walked around, I checked all of our pink here. I didn't find anything that had selenium glowing in it. One of the ways that you can check for your pink depression glass, you know it hasn't been reproduced if it's slightly glowing, because you can find the pink that has the manganese in it that glows. Also, with your green depression glass, you know it's original when it glows. When they remade this in the 50s, they never put uranium back in it. So with these two pieces, they glow, they're original. Here this pattern is exactly the same, and it doesn't glow at all. So it's one of the reproductions of the depression glass. So that's how you can know if you want your depression glass, you want it to be from the 30s, then that's the way you can tell, especially with your yellow pieces, your green pieces. Not all the yellow made during the 30s will glow, but definitely if they actually made it with it, when they made it again in the 50s, they did not come back and make any of that with the uranium in it. Because it was just, if you started making it before 59, you couldn't even get the uranium to actually make the original formula in the first place. So most of them didn't want to go through the whole hassle of trying to get the uranium, get it shipped, going by all the regulations with it. I actually saw a pretty cool video last night with a guy that he was going to make his own uranium glass. So he got a small amount, and of course he's all gloved up and all that kind of stuff when he's using it. But until you see the process, you don't realize how hard it is to get this translucent part. When he gets it dissolved, it's very cloudy, it's very murky, and he has to keep going through this chemical process of filtering it out and filtering it out and filtering it out to finally get where you would actually get something that is this clear. And that was one of the reasons why the term Vaseline became popular in the United States, is because the yellow glass with uranium in it reminded people of the original Vaseline glass, the original Vaseline petroleum jelly. Because when they started making that in the early 1900s, it wasn't the color it is today. It was actually this weird, yellowish, greenish tinge. And that's when they started using, as early as 1927, calling it Vaseline glass, because it reminded them of actual Vaseline petroleum jelly. And then some of your pieces actually are not as translucent, so it really takes on that appearance of Vaseline. So that's where that terminology came from. Now, if you go outside of the United States and you're looking for this type of glass, they don't use the terminology of Vaseline. If you were in the UK, if you were looking for this yellow glass, you would actually be looking for primrose pearline. That's what they call it in England. So it's only in the United States that you hear the term Vaseline at all. So, any questions? Sure.
I was wondering, I recognize little salt and pepper, and people had those for years, by my mother-in-law.
Right.
But I was wondering if salt, because it's so chemical, would affect those little things.
Probably not the salt way back when. I would be a little bit more concerned about the salt nowadays, because I would think it would have, because this one, it doesn't have any reaction whatsoever, so it's not cloudy or anything like that, because you can tell when you have it in the clear glass and it's sit there for a long time and they haven't used it. It does kind of eat at the glass. Right. If I was going to put glass, if I was going to use one of these shakers for salt, I would use Himalayan salt or Redmond's real salt that is mined out of the salt mines in Utah that's all natural. I'm not so sure that I'd want to use the regular table salt that we have nowadays, because it has a lot of chemical iodine in it that's, not naturally found in the salt. They're spraying that on there. So that's a good question. So yeah, that's a good question, because, you will find in the older ones that somebody's had forever and they didn't use it and it was just for looks, and when you dump it out, the glass is actually cloudy. It is, yeah, it has actually damaged the glass. Yeah. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Mhm.
We talked about it before I sat down. The Carnival Glass,
Mhm.
what kinds of colors does that glow?
Oh, it does. Mhm. So yeah. So see, it has Vaseline here
Okay.
in the actual handle and around the edges. So they actually use multiple processes to get actual Carnival glass. They actually were spraying the chemical salts on this molten glass, not using any type of protection for their lungs when they were making this type of glass in the 20s. So it's very beautiful, and you'll see the reproductions from the 50s and 70s doesn't remotely look the same because they're not using the same chemicals, and of course the process is a little bit different. But yeah, they actually get the reaction. Magnesium and different type of salts were sprayed on that to get all those different kind of colors. But they actually have uranium in them as well. And then you can see on the bottom of this, it's got some manganese in the bottom. And if you ever see these are not vases. They're stands for punch bowls. I see this ever so often. Somebody will have it like this. It's a vase. It's like, that's a very shallow vase, but it's a punch bowl stand. So back when punch bowls were very popular in the 1800s, all the way to the 1990s in the South, we like punch. This actually raises your punch bowl up and allows you to put the cups around the edges without it touching the table and that type of thing.
So were those made by the same company, manufactured by Northwood or something like that? Or no?
I think this one may be Northwood. I do believe this one is Imperial. And then we were talking about, I don't know if you saw this, but the L.E. Smith and the Viking on those. So we do have reactive jewelry in the store right now. That actually, we have some jewelry right now in the store that has uranium in it. Nancy's beaded purse sold yesterday. So, and that color is actually a very light greenish blue color. They had combined it with multiple different chemicals to get that color, and they were using it as a different way to shade the leaves around the roses and the flowers on there. But as soon as you hit it with the black light, it lit up like this right here. But you would have never known just looking at it that actually had uranium in it. So it's always great to have your black light with you because you can miss out on some fantastic pieces and possibly pieces that you would get at a very, very good deal because they don't know that it has uranium in it. Because uranium is very popular right now. There's 3 different groups on Facebook where people are all the time sharing and selling, and it's really gotten popular in the last couple of years. But not everybody is aware of, it doesn't always look like this or this that has uranium in it. So people can miss out on it and you can get a good find.
So my other question
Mhm.
is, the impression glass, there's a few pieces up there in green
Mhm.
that glow, but specifically I'm thinking about pattern I collect, the Canfield Valley.
Oh, it glows. It glows. Yes. So all the green, the depression green, has uranium in it. That's how they get this color. So if they remade it in the 50s, it will not. But all of the green, that's why it's this nice pretty color that it is. And in case anybody doesn't know the depression colors came out the yellows, the pinks, the greens. Because the entire country was going through a huge depression, this glass was super duper cheap. A lot of times you got these pieces free. They were in with your oats, they were in with your, washing powders, things like that. But it was trying to cheer people up because of the horrible depression that we were in, because, the Midwest was in the Dust Bowl and the horrible drought, and they weren't able to grow crops. But that's where they come up with the idea, oh, let's make this fun glass. And how do we get these pretty color? Well, we use uranium to get this pretty color. So one of the things that a lot of people don't know, they know the pretty colors of Depression era, but they also made blacks and reds during that time too. But everybody usually knows your yellows, your pinks, your greens. But there's also a lot of black was made during that time, cobalt blue, and even some red as well. Yes, yes. It's really hard to get a true dark black. So yeah, that's no, 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 no. Well, they're using manganese to get that darker color, but that's why when you hold it to the light, it's purple, because you can get that dark color with manganese, but it's always going to show purple. And depending on how you mix the manganese, it can actually. Fenton made the little slippers, the purple slippers. They're a dark, pretty color, but when you actually shine a black light on them, they turn like a light lavender color, and it's the manganese that's reacting to the black light. But yeah, that's where you get your really pretty purples is using your manganese. Yes, yes. That's known as your sun opals, your opalines. So your 1800s milk glass, when you hold it up, it's like an actual opal gem. It'll be orange and bright, all those colors. It's made differently when they started making it, in the 50s, where it's so dense, where the term milk glass actually came from, because you really can't see through it at all. But that's a way you can tell if you're dealing with your original Victorian milk glass, is hold it up to the light and you'll get those nice pretty colors. So any other questions? One of the things that a lot of people don't realize as well is Murano used Vaseline glass, but Murano yellow without without uranium in it, and Murano regular yellow with Vaseline with uranium in it looks almost identical. I mean, I've been collecting this for a while, and Murano will fool me because it's got this weird yellow look to it. And then I always go and get the black light, and it's like, nope, it doesn't glow. But Murano was actually making this glass as well during the 1800s. But that's one you really want to have your black light with, because their regular yellow is very, very similar to a uranium yellow. So it's hard to tell. And I've got some good examples in my book up here if you want to see my Vaseline book. So, any other questions?
The piece you keep referring back to, what was that used for?
This is the tea berry gum stand. So, 1900, you've got your old mercantiles. They've got these glass, display pieces. Most people know with the metal lids, and you flip up, and that's where you could get your candy and stuff out of. This actually came and they stacked the tea berry gum on it. So this actually set, right by the counter where they would ring you up. But yeah, this is from early 1900s. This is a piece that has been reproduced as well. But yeah, it was my mother-in-law's piece, and she was like, if you could pick one piece of glass, because she was also an antique dealer and she dealt with a lot of glass. If you could have one piece of glass out of my collection, what would you want? And I instantly said, I want the tea berry gum. I remember tea berry before they basically got rid of it, but I love the color because it's just such a perfect example of what the Vaseline glass is supposed to look like. And I'll open this up real fast. Hopefully you can see when you're out picking. See how that kind of glows in the light? Can you see the difference? So sometimes it's going to be easier if you were at a yard sale. But I had the opportunity one time of a person who had just been buying way too much at Goodwill and places like that. And so we're in his garage, and it's dark in his garage. So I keep stepping out into the light. And I can tell, oh, yep, that's real. Oh, yep, that's real. And the problem is we're buying green depression. So that's why I keep going out into the actual sunlight to see what it looks like, because I didn't want to buy the 50s reproduction because it doesn't sell as well, because I knew people would be looking for the uranium in it. So sometimes you can be fooled, but a lot of times you'll see a reaction. You'll see that nice green glow look to it when you hold it in the right light, because our light actually from the sun has UVA rays in it, and it's picking up on that. That's why you can actually see that under the right conditions outside. You can see that it's got the right kind of glow to it. Any other questions? Yes.
I heard with uranium glass, you could usually tell if it's a reproduction or original piece because the original has the seams usually going through it, and a lot of times it will have little air bubbles in it.
Mm-hmm. One of the things, well, the air bubbles is a good thing to talk about. A lot of people think, oh, uranium is so dangerous. The way they actually get air bubbles out of translucent glass is actually using arsenic. Arsenic reacts to the oxygen and gets rid of those air bubbles. So some pieces will have seams. That one I'm really not sure on. When you start dealing with trying to find things for seams, I know this from dealing with depression glass. You really have to study it. One of the things that the seams makes a big difference in your depression glass if you're trying to make sure you have a real piece versus a 1950s reproduction piece is the way they put the handles on. So when you're dealing with your cream and sugars, your cups, then you have to know there is a way that it looks different. So you have to know how that looks. With depression glass, when they did the molds, they aren't the original molds. They're actually a fourth to half an inch larger. So that's one of the ways that you can know if you really love depression glass. It's really good to get some of the books, and they actually tell you, this manufacturer only made green. And then oh, well, now that Madrid color is in clear and red, and oh, well, that's all the reproduction pieces. So a lot of times, not always, but a lot of them when you get your actual depression glass books, they actually in the 50s and 70s came back with different colors. So that's an easy way to know. It's easy if you want to just collect the green because it's going to glow. So that's one of the ways you can tell. But your seams, that gets into more, that is going to take more time for you to study because seams can throw you off because once you start talking about seams, then you're going to think everything that has seam issues can be a problem, where with Jeanette and McKee have very, very rough seams, especially McKee. Now, McKee made the only the uranium set of dishes from 1931 to 1941. You would think that if you just came across them and you're dealing with glass that's now manufactured in China, it would really have you scratching your head because the seams are really, really rough on those. And they're all real. It was the way they actually made your die-cast metal molds. So with your die-cast metal molds, those molds are very, very expensive to make. They were back then, they are now. That's why your auto manufacturers don't always change the design of the cars. Those metal molds that they stamp that metal into are very, very expensive to make. So on the seams, it's not something I've really gotten into just because different manufacturers' seams are different than other manufacturers. The thing that you can learn is if you're dealing with cups and sugars and saucers, you can see, oh, well, you'll see it's pinched different at the top when it's attached. So if you know that, and that's part of that whole entire set, you can easily tell that is, yes, this is a reproduction, that isn't. But when you're dealing with seams and you're dealing with lots of different variety of glasses, that's a harder way to tell if something's a reproduction or not. So one of the things you can do also with Madrid is a good pattern in depression glass. Because when they made the Madrid pattern, when they remade it, the actual design is not identical. When you glance at it, it looks identical. When you start really examining the actual pattern itself, you'll see there's difference in the way they made the pattern. It's not identical when they made that die cast mold. They miss a couple of places, so it's not perfect. So it's one of those, when I'm dealing with depression glass, I have 4 different depression glass books at home. I just like to, if I was going to a sale and I see online, oh, that's cameo, then I start going through my books, oh, what colors did they make cameo in originally? Or if I just want the green, I just got the green, I don't have to worry about it, I just need my Blacklight. So, and it doesn't really matter it never matters how bright it is. I mean, we're under fluorescent light and this glows. You only have to worry about having it dark for this to glow is when you're actually photographing it. So when I did the photograph for the email, I actually had to build a little box over it to make it darker so that all the pieces would glow at once. So as you can see, this is glowing as I'm going through it, but it's not picking up on every single one. I would actually have to block out this top light where these would glow at one time. So that's the only difference. You don't need it to be dark. You do have for it to be darker for something as light as manganese, but not uranium. Any other questions? Well, thank you everybody for joining our class, and I hope you got some good information and have some fun going out and looking for Vaseline glass and uranium glass, and maybe now you'll be looking for selenium and cadmium and potassium pieces as well. Or what's always fun is go home and check out your pieces at home, and you'll be surprised at what might glow at home once you have a black light to look at it.